Many people think that John D. Rockefeller, the oil billionaire, is the richest self-made person in modern history. His estimated net worth in today's money is around $400 billion. Even though he gave away a big chunk of his money, he came from a poor background. John D. Rockefeller was born into a big family with a father who was often gone and was considered a con man who sold useless drugs. So, John had to help support his family from a young age. He did odd jobs like taking care of the turkeys of a neighbor or selling potatoes and candy. Even though these jobs didn't pay much, John was good at them and worked very hard at them. He saved enough money to be able to start giving out small loans to other people. He was driven to start his own business as a young boy. But when he was 16, he quit school and got his first real job as a bookkeeper, which paid him only 50 cents a day. But after about 2 years of working there, his bosses still wouldn't give him a decent raise, so he started his own production business. He wanted to make $100,000, and he knew he would have to build something independently to reach that goal. He was lucky that his first job had taught him a lot and given him the skills, contacts, and name he needed to raise $4,000 to start his own business selling meat, hay, and grain. The first year it was open for business, it made almost $500,000 in sales. Rockefeller kept only some of that money for himself, though. A lot of it went toward business costs and loans. But it meant Rockefeller had real money to spend when a big chance came. That chance came from oil. In 1859, the first oil well in the United States was found. This was the start of the Pennsylvania oil rush. But Rockefeller saw that most people were trying to get rich by digging for oil, but the real money was in processing oil. So, when he was only 24, he took the money from his first business and used it to build an oil plant. Around this time, he met Henry Flagler, who wanted to put money into his business. Together, they set up the Standard Oil Company and started buying out the smaller oil companies in the area that were competing with them. When one of these plants refused to sell him their business, he just started selling his oil at a loss so that all their customers would come to him instead. This puts these smaller companies out of business. Because of these things, the Standard Oil Company could keep growing nationwide. They kept getting rid of competition by buying them out, beating their prices, and cutting costs wherever possible. The bigger they got, the more power they had in negotiations, so they could get better rates, fees, and deals on everything. Rockefeller was also known for making deals that were secret and shady. When you add up all of these things, by the 1870s, Rockefeller's oil company owned 90% of the oil processing business worldwide. He also put the owners of the oil plants he bought on the board of trustees. All the smartest oil experts worked for one big company, with Rockefeller at the top. He owned 20,000 oil wells and had more than 100,000 workers. At its peak, the value of his business is thought to have been worth almost $1 trillion. This kind of power only happens sometimes. But Rockefeller still had more to do. At this time, oil and trains were the two most important businesses. So, Rockefeller tried to do the same thing with trains that he had just done with oil. But as he started to control another company, he also started to get a bad reputation. He was seen as the personification of business violence and greed. As a reaction to Rockefeller's ever-growing business empire, laws were passed to try to stop empires like his. In particular, the Sherman Antitrust Act was passed, leading to Standard Oil being split into several different companies. Over time, many of these companies just merged back together. Some of them, like BP and Chevron, are still around today. Since Rockefeller kept his shares in all those companies even after they split up, he was still the richest person in the world when he died and was probably the wealthiest self-made person in modern history. Now, what should we really think about John D. Rockefeller? On the one hand, he made oil cheap and accessible to many people. From having nothing, he built a business empire that might never be topped. He gave about $540 million to charity, which, when you take inflation into account, makes him one of the most generous people in history. On the other hand, Rockefeller was a greedy, cruel business bully who often bullied, extorted, and took advantage of others on his way to becoming the most powerful person in the world, especially when getting rid of the competition. Ron Chernow, who wrote a book about him, says that his good side was just as good as his bad side was terrible. Rarely in history has there been such a confusing person. But one thing that can't be argued is that he will always be known for his insanely large wealth and his effect on the world.